Hey everyone, in this video we'll talk about how to solve perfect square trinomials. So let's say we had this quadratic equation right here, x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 0. Good, so the first step is to get this in ax squared plus bx plus c form, and as you can see it is already in that form. We have our ax squared right here, plus our bx right here, plus our c right here. And what are our a, b, and c equal to? So a, b in red, and c in green. What are these all equal to? So a, as you can see right here, there is nothing in front of the x squared term, so that means when there's nothing in front of the variable, the coefficient's always 1 times x squared, so a is 1. What is b? B, as you can see right here, is 6. As you can see, bx, 6x, so b is 6. And what is our c? It is simply just this 9 right here. So 1, 6, and 9. Okay, so before we get to solving this, how can we tell if this is a perfect square trinomial? How do we know? So what we're going to do is we are going to take a look at a formula. It goes b squared minus 4ac, and we'll go into detail about this particular formula in a later video. But what this is called, it's very important, this is called the discriminant. The discriminant. And in a later video, you'll be able to see where it comes from and why it's important. But this is the discriminant. That is what it's called, b squared minus 4ac. And basically, if b squared minus 4ac, if this equals 0, so if b squared minus 4ac equals 0, then the trinomial that we have is a perfect square trinomial. So then it is a perfect square trinomial. It's a perfect square trinomial if it equals 0. So let's go ahead and test it. Let's see, does our b squared minus 4ac, does our discriminant equal 0? So let's go down a little bit. So b squared minus 4ac, what is our b? So as you can see right here, our b is 6. So let's plug in 6 for b. So this is 6 squared. And what is our a? As you can see up here, our a is 1. So we'll plug in 1 for a. So let's substitute a for 1. And what is our c? So as our c, as you can see up here, is 9. And we'll plug in 9 for this c. So times 9. Good. So what is 6 squared? Let's evaluate this first. 6 squared is 36. And then let's write the rest of it. Minus 4 times 1 times 9. Okay, and then according to PEMDAS, we'll do the multiplication first. What is 4 times 1 times 9? So what is 4 times 1? That is simply 4. And then 4 times 9 is 36. Okay, so let's write this down. 36 minus, this evaluates to 36. 36 minus 36 equals 0. There we go. So our discriminant for this perfect square trinomial we started with, the discriminant of this trinomial is 0. So that's how we know it is a perfect square trinomial. So its discriminant is 0, as we just saw. So we know that it is a perfect square trinomial. And that's great. So we know it's a perfect square trinomial. Now the question is, how do we actually solve it? How do we solve for x? Because at the end of the day, it's an equation, so we want to be able to solve for x. So let's copy and paste this down here. Let me go ahead and bring it down just a little bit. And let's go solve it. So we know this is a perfect square trinomial. So this is a perfect square trinomial. And once you know it's a perfect square trinomial, it makes factoring it a lot easier. Because what you can do now is the next step, you're going to set up a parentheses, x plus, and then you're going to put a squared right here, squared, outside the parentheses. And you are going to insert b divided by 2 right here. So again, what was our b equal to? So as you could see, as we wrote up here, our b was 6. So our b is 6. Okay, but we want to enter b divided by 2. So what's b divided by 2? That is simply 6 divided by 2, which is 3. So we are going to plug this 3 in here and b over 2. So let's rewrite this, x plus 3 squared. Good, so we've started with this perfect square trinomial right here, and we came to this step, x plus 3 squared, x plus 3 in parentheses squared, and remember that this all, if we write down everything from up here, this all equals 0. Perfect. So x plus 3 squared equals 0. And what is the next step? How do we isolate this x? Well, we have this squared right here. So what we can do is take the square root of both sides. So let's take the square root of both sides. That will cancel out the square and the square root. And we are left with x plus 3 equals. And what is the square root of 0? That is simply just 0. And this becomes very simple. To solve for x, we would just subtract both sides by 3. And we are left with x equals negative 3. Perfect. So now that we have that, let's change up the original problem just a little bit. So let me go ahead and actually just copy this. And I want to show you what we would do if this situation were a little different. So let's change this problem. So instead of this equaling 0, let's say this equals 4. Let's say this equals 4. Good. Well, we know that this trinomial right here, x squared plus 6x plus 9, as we saw from above, its discriminant is still 0. That's b squared minus 4ac, as we saw above, is still 0. This is still a perfect square trinomial. So we can still factor this into x plus b over 2 squared. And what is b? Our b is 6. So what's 6 over 2? That's 3. So x plus 3 squared. X plus 3 squared, and then we'll drop down the rest of this equation equals 4. Good. So x plus 3 squared equals 4. And what we can do here, we can still solve for x by taking the square root of both sides. Let me just make that blue instead of red. So we can take the square root of both sides. And that square root will cancel out the squared. And we are left with x plus 3 equals, and we have this radical 4 here. Now, we have to be very careful. This is what I want to point out. In this step right here, this step, when you take the square root of both sides of an equation, so when you take the square root of both sides of an equation, you have to put a plus minus right here. So let me just move this just a little bit so you could see what I mean. So let's move this here. So in an equation, when you take the square root of both sides, you must put a plus minus symbol right here. What is a plus minus symbol? A plus minus symbol written like this, one on top of another, plus and minus right below it. It means that the answer could either be positive or it could be negative. And why is that? Then that's because if you think about 4, being a perfect square, 4 equals 2 times 2, right? 4 equals 2 squared. And it doesn't just equal 2 squared, it can also equal negative 2 times negative 2. So it can also equal negative 2 squared. So taking the square root of 4 in an equation, it could be 2. And it could also be negative 2. So it can be either of these, 2 or negative 2. And that's the thing with any perfect square. Let's say, for example, we had this mini equation right here, x squared equals 16. So you could tell right away what would x be. So x could be 4, because we know 4 squared equals 16. But x could also very well be negative 4, because negative 4 squared also equals positive 16, because a negative times a negative squared is still a positive number. If you square a negative, it becomes positive. So that's very important. That's why we have to include this plus minus symbol right here. Okay, so we have this plus minus symbol, and what is radical 4? Radical 4 comes out to 2. So we have plus minus 2. We have x plus 3 equals plus minus 2. And now we actually have to break this up into two separate equations. So we have x plus 3 equals positive 2, and x plus 3 equals negative 2. So let me just make that part green. So negative 2 and then positive 2. That's essentially what the plus minus symbol does. It can either be positive or it can be negative. Let me actually just put a divider right here so it doesn't get confusing. Okay, so let's go ahead and solve for x on both sides. So we'll start with this. What is x over here? Let's subtract 3 from both sides. X equals positive 2 minus 3, that is negative 1. And let's do the same thing here. We'll subtract 3 from both sides. What is negative 2 minus 3? That is negative 5. So our x could be negative 5 or negative 1. We have two solutions for this problem that we started with right here. And those are our two solutions for x. So that's how you solve equations with perfect square trinomials in them. The first step is to make sure that it is a perfect square trinomial. And if it is, then you know immediately how to factor it. And then you could go ahead and take the square root of both sides. Don't forget about the plus minus, and then solve for x. I hope this video helps, and please let me know down in the comments below if you have any questions, and thank you for watching.